Morning, everybody. So today's little sewing candy is making your own piping. Now I actually need this red to do a bag. So this is Volcano Red Pacific Marine Vinyl. And I will be using this piping cord. So this is Birch size 1. It doesn't tell me how many mils it is, like millimeters. It just says size 1. This is the only size piping cord that I use for everything. Today I will be doing the vinyl, but you can also make piping cord out of cotton and poplin and pretty much anything else. So the way I'm going to make this one, with the size 1, I'm going to cut a width that is 1.5 inches long. Now the reason for that is you want to have 1/2 inch each side of the piping cord, and then I'm allowing 1/2 inch to go all the way and wrap around it. So when you're using thicker cord, you want to work out how thick it is and then add 1 inch. So when you fold it in half, you'll have a 1/2 inch seam allowance, which will make it easy to attach to things. So I am just going to, now I don't need a lot for this bag that I'm putting it in, so I'm just going to line this up along the edge. Now with piping cord made out of vinyl, I cut it straight. Some people suggest to do it on a 70-degree angle to get slightly more of a bend. But with my vinyl, I've never had an issue to do it this way, and I feel like I waste less doing it this way. So I'm just going to keep moving up and cut along. And that will be enough piping cord for what I need. So a good way to check is if you can cut off a little bit, stick it in the middle, and then fold it over. And you should have 1/2 inch from the edge of the cord to there. So if you're not sure of the diameter, you can measure it, or you can just cut like a little sample piece and see if it's going to fit. That's going to fit fine. But if I were to want to use this fabric here, for example, so I have some, this is lawn cotton. This is actually going to be a dress for myself. But if I was going to use this fabric for piping, you don't just want to cut it straight. Unless you're just putting it in straight seams. If there's no curve where you're putting your piping, it actually doesn't matter if you cut it on the angle or not. But if you were to do like a round bag, for example, what you want to do is you want to iron your fabric first. And then you'll get your ruler and you will literally go to the 45-degree angle. So most rulers have 45 and then 30 and 60. Sometimes they have 70, just depending on what you're after. So what you would do is you would put the 45-degree angle like that along this edge, and then cut that way, so that you're going to have your strips along the bias, which is the 45-degree angle across fabric, because it gives it a little bit more stretch and then allows it to bend around corners without getting all gathered. So the downside to that is that you do tend to waste a lot. So you would cut that way, basically into a square, and then move along if you needed them longer. And then this corner here, you would use maybe for lining or something, so that you have minimal wastage. All right, let's go to the sewing machine and I will show you how to prep it ready for a bag. I'm going to do the stitching in a different color just so that you can really see it. Now the first thing you're going to want to do is put a zipper foot on. Now depending on your machine will depend on what kind of zipper foot you have. I like to use basically invisible ones so that you can get really, really close to the stitching. So that's the first thing we're going to do, is change over the foot. I don't change my foot often, but if I do, it's usually just between these 2 feet. These are my most used feet. Now on a domestic machine, you can still make this, but you want to get not just the standard sewing foot that comes with your machine. What you'll want is one that can get basically next to where it's going to stitch. So you need a short one like this, or on the Brother machines you can get ones that are adjustable. That is perfect for this particular thing. Now I am putting my stitch length on a longer one because it'll stitch quicker. And if you're new to this and you're worried, you could stick some double-sided tape down the edge, but I'm not going to. I also don't cut the piping cord off. So I'm going to lay it so that there is a little bit overhang at the top so that I can see what I'm doing. And then I'm just going to fold it in half with the wrong sides together. And I'm going to stitch. Now, you don't want to stitch it so that the piping cord is insanely tight, because we don't want to see these stitches later when we're adding it to our bag or wherever we're sewing it. So I'm going to actually stitch probably like in the middle of everything. So I'm going to line up that edge because that is important. And then I'm going to stitch a little bit over. So if I was to push right against the piping cord, you've actually probably got a couple of millimeters between, because I want to make sure that these stitches are never going to be seen when I install it in the bag. But you don't want to do it too loose because then the piping cord can move around. So I try and do it pretty much in the middle. So this edge here is gliding along my 1/4 inch guide. And this is how I make my piping cord. Now, obviously there's different ways to do it. But you want a nice long stitch length because then it's going to work quicker. I don't want it so tight that it's not flexible. I want to be able to kind of move it around. So this is how I would make it. Now, if you're using fabric, you will join it in like you would quilting. So you'd have one piece like this, and then the other piece at a right angle and stitch on the angle, cut off the excess to make it one continuous piece. Depending on your print, you could even match up the print. I need one more loop off here. I don't really buy pre-made piping cord. I've only got it in black. I also don't use it very often because I find that it's not the same amount of shiny as the other ones. So I don't use it often. And then I'm not even going to backstitch at the end of that. I'm just going to snip that off and then cut the cord here as well. So if I hold this up close, you can see I'm pretty much in the middle, but the edge of the piping cord is actually kind of there. See, if I crease that, you can see where it sticks out. So I've given myself enough room that my stitching won't accidentally poke through if I'm not 100% tight on that piping. But it is holding it together, and then we've still got our 1/2 inch seam allowance against it if you push really, really hard up against the piping cord, which is the name of the game. You want to have it nice and firm. So that's how I make it. So size 1 piping cord requires 1.5 inch thick pieces. Doesn't matter if it's vinyl or fabric, it is all done the same, and I will sew it the same in the center. So I hope that was helpful, and until next time, guys.